What's good, YouTube? This is your boy Nehemiah, aka Neo, and today we're gonna be talking about DeAndre Ayton. So, currently, as the days of free agency have gone, it's been slowing down, especially with the trades and such. But there's one thing that we have to acknowledge, and that's that Ayton, who's supposed to be a max player, is still on the books, which is crazy to think about because he was one of the more coveted free agents, especially when it comes to restricted free agency. However, it seems like no one's valuing him. So let's get into that and let's talk about what's wrong right now. But before we get into that, I want you guys to like and subscribe if you want to, because it just helps me and the channel grow. When it comes to DeAndre Ayton, it really seems like people are just turning a blind eye at him because of the max contract, and rightfully so. Personally, I believe that DeAndre Ayton's biggest weakness isn't necessarily his game, but how much money he demands, especially for what he brings to the roster. He's someone who really has to be looked out when it comes to the offensive end. People have to, search for him on the offensive end via post ups, entry passes, dump passes, all of that. And he doesn't really have a lot of self creation outside of that. Not only that, but he doesn't really have enough defensive prowess to actually make up for the lack of offensive creation. So you're essentially just looking into someone who only has potential. And when that happens, you don't really want to have a max contract, He's probably not worth it, in my opinion, for Phoenix to keep out a max contract because he just doesn't have the facilities to actually use a lot of self creation or even defensive abilities that teams need. A team like Minnesota, for example, they were looking for Rudy Gobert simply because they wanted a better defense. They wanted a better ceiling raiser. But when it comes to DeAndre Ayton, he just doesn't have, that oomph that a lot of other bigs have. Even a guy like Bam Adebayo, he's shown to be a ceiling raiser on the defensive end. When it comes to DeAndre Ayton, while he is one of the better scoring bigs in the postseason, it really doesn't make sense for a team to really go after a guy like DeAndre Ayton when it comes to, a restricted free agency because he's not really that worth it on a 5-year max extension, which is why teams like the New York Knicks are prioritizing a guy like Jalen Brunson, who's more of a ball handler, more of a shot creator, who has a lot better ways to become better in the future compared to Aiden, who's a post-scoring big, a more traditional big, which also plays as a factor. We're seeing more traditional bigs, people like Patrick Ewing and such. We're seeing those guys kind of go in the dumpster when it comes to a lot of signing and such. Someone like Jaleel Okafor, for example, a post big, he wasn't really looked at as great as some of the other bigs. Even a guy like DeAndre Ayton, for example, he's just not really as good as some of the other bigs that you want in the league, especially a guy who's not versatile on offense. When we look at a lot of the bigger guys on offense in this league, they're a lot more versatile than they were a couple of years ago. Think, for example, even a guy like Boogie Cousins when he was in his prime, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid. They all are more multifaceted offensive players that could just be a sole driving factor for the offense. And for Giannis and Embiid, they're also really good defensive players. And I think you guys are getting a theme from what I'm saying. DeAndre Ayton just doesn't bring any of this. It seems like he's just benefiting off of Chris Paul. And I don't want to be really rude on DeAndre Ayton. I think that there are still good fits for him. I think that Phoenix is still a good fit. Detroit is really a good fit. Charlotte is a really good fit. But when we think about it all, it makes sense as to why a team is so skeptic on DeAndre Ayton seven days into free agency. He just not really bringing the ceiling raiser that a lot of teams need, and that's fine. But it comes at the expense of a max contract with DeAndre Ayton. Do I think he could be a max contract player? Yes, but when it comes to how he operates on the offensive end, we have to look at and see that he may just not be that guy, and that's okay. But he's just not with the max contract right now. Now, in terms of fits that I would like to see him on, again, I already listed three. Another really good fit for DeAndre Ayton would be the Pacers if they're willing to blow it up. The Pacers are willing to give Ayton the money that he wants, I believe, because they are able to go younger. You know, Chris Dorte. I don't know why I butchered that. He's a younger player, even though he's 24, I think 25 around that. Tyrese Halliburton, you know, they have a little young core going into next season. And even though Miles Turner is a younger player, I believe, I think he's around 26, 24, he's still not really the guy that you want to go to when it comes to building a roster, you know. He's really injury prone. His on court ability is just not there. But DeAndre Ayton is a guy who's always on the court. The only time why I believe he was out for an extended period was because of the drug allegations. And you know, after he got through that, you know, he's been playing 50 plus games every season, 60, 70 plus. And I think that the Pacers could use a guy like that, especially because Miles Turner is just on the block apparently. But Miles Turner is always on the block, so you never know. Another team that would really benefit from a guy like Ayton, even if they had to pay the max contract, is the Brooklyn Nets. And I know, KD's probably not going to get traded with the packages that are being said right now. I heard that Minnesota would have to give up Cat, Ant, 3 first-round picks, and 3 swaps. That's too much for a guy like Kevin Durant. I understand he has value. He's on a long-term contract. That's too much, and we have to acknowledge that. But when it comes to how we could evaluate DeAndre Ayton on the Brooklyn Nets, again, a younger team outside of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, if they could go back to being younger, they could. Focusing on Ben Simmons as a sole star, with DeAndre Ayton being the secondary option when it comes to offense, especially as a pick and roll big. My question about that would be, though, how good is Ben Simmons looking on in the perimeter as well as DeAndre Ayton? Are they able to be capable on that end? If not, then that may be it for them. However, I do think that this could still be a great opportunity for the team. But personally, me, I would go after a team that actually has a really good use for me, like the Charlotte Hornets, for example, with the money that they probably aren't going to give Miles Bridges for obvious reasons. I think that they should just pursue a guy like DeAndre Ayton, especially if they're going to keep Gordon Hayward. So that's all for me. I think DeAndre Ayton is in a really tight predicament. Another key free agent that's also in a really tight predicament is Colin Sexton. Colin, if you're listening to this right now, go to the Milwaukee Bucks. They'll treat you right. But anyways, that's it for me. This is the boy Nehemiah, aka Neo, and I hope you're having a good one.